NBC News has not independently confirmed the allegations. Let's go ahead and bring in my political panel, okay? Basil Smikle is a Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. And Elise Jordan is here. Y'all have probably seen her on the internet in these focus groups she's been doing. She is an MSNBC political analyst and former aide to the George W. Bush White House. All right, welcome to you both. Basil, I want to start with you because you will notice that State Representative Salinas really focused mostly on abortion in the interview that I had with her, despite this recent polling that we've all been talking about the economy, and that is on the top of voters' minds. As I thought about this more, it struck me that perhaps she talked mostly about abortion because abortion is an economic issue for the people of the 6th Congressional District. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, there is a lot of reporting now that Democrats should perhaps have not talked as much about reproductive rights and focused on other issues. It would have been malpractice for Democrats not to talk about. It is a defining issue for a generation. And so it is important to not only discuss it, but to talk about the intersectionality of it, right? That it does hit on economics. It hits on corporate America, because there are questions about what companies are going to be, their ability to hire staffers in states that significantly restrict abortions, right? And so there are all of these issues that are attendant upon this one really important point, which is the loss of reproductive rights across the country. I will say, however, that among the sort of basket of issues that's available for Democrats, we had a lot of success in the suburbs over the last few cycles. So we can talk about inflation. Democrats can talk about gas prices. There are so many other issues that Democrats can talk about, a laundry list of them. We just need to be able to show that we're conversant in all of it. There's no limit to how much and to the extent we can engage voters on these issues.
Yeah, I think some of my former colleagues and such should be talking about all of the kitchen table issues, including abortion, gas prices, the prices of things at the grocery store. Elise, you actually talked to some voters in the swing state of Pennsylvania about this very issue. For anyone who has not yet seen your focus groups, they don't need to wait any longer. We have a little snippet right here. I want my viewers to watch this.
Will any of you vote specifically based on a politician's views on abortion?
No.
Strictly no.
If the choice is pro-life or pro-choice, and they're only pro-life with no other circumstance, I would never vote for them. So yes, I would make that decision solely on that, because that's a line I'm unwilling to cross.
I agree.
I found this fascinating. Elise, you did a number of different focus groups. What was the makeup of that focus group, and what was the takeaway from that discussion with those folks on the ground?
Symone, I can tell you've worked on a lot of campaigns. So this group were Bucks County swing voters, and you know how important those voters are, how coveted those votes are in the run-up to the midterm election. And so we talked about so many different issues, but I really wanted to hone in on abortion to see if there would be any strictly abortion voters. And you heard the swing voters just then. It's one of a host of issues that they're really concerned about, but it's not going to necessarily be end-all, be-all for them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to this point of all of the kitchen table issues are on the ballot for folks across the country. Sticking with Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor and Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman and Doctor turned Republican Senate candidate Mehmet Oz, they faced off in their only debate on October 25th. Now, Basil, John Fetterman has been taking a lot of hits for his record on crime, or the lack thereof, according to his Republican opponents. And he's taken a lot of scrutiny over the stroke that he had earlier this year. What do you think John Fetterman's focus should be in these last couple of days before the election?
Well, one of the things that I've been saying, and whether it's Dr. Oz or it's Herschel Walker, that many of these candidates, they're not great, but they are vessels and vehicles for an extreme agenda. And I think he should hit on that on a number of different policy issues. It doesn't have to just be reproductive rights. It could be a host of other issues. The question is, is Dr. Oz going to be able to withstand, Trump pressure or the pressure from Republicans to do the right thing for the people of Pennsylvania. And that I think is the lead into the argument of, do you as a voter want to open the door to more extreme politics in this state? Now, it's also important to note that, his race, among other races like we see in New York, they're tightening. And so,
yes.
The real concern that Fetterman and Democrats, Pennsylvania, elsewhere.
We have some polling. I want to show folks the polling. There are some dueling Pennsylvania polls specifically. There's a CNN poll of likely voters in Pennsylvania. It found that Fetterman was just 6 points ahead of Mehmet Oz. That is quite narrowly outside the poll's 4.6 margin of error. And this poll was conducted October 13th through 17th. Then there's a new CBS poll conducted the following week, and it showed that John Fetterman was only ahead by 2 points. That's also within the margin of error of 4.4 points. So this point that you're making, Basil, about the tightening across the board, it is, frankly, what happens when we get this close to Election Day. But this is real tight. I think this is very tight. This is too tight for me.
Yeah, no, and I'll just say very quickly, that's why you're seeing Republicans hit on this issue of crime, because they're trying to racialize it and urbanize it, and that fear helps stoke a lot of votes on the right. But at the same time, Democrats, once again, need black votes to come out and support these candidates. So, a lot of black voters are looking very carefully on what Fetterman and others have to say as the race, as you say, gets tighter and closer.
Elise, it strikes me that this really just speaks to the unpredictability of this race. And you talked to some undecided voters in Pennsylvania, and this is what they told you.
He's a big guy. He just had a stroke. I mean, I'm not sure how if it's going to impair his ability to perform.
I just haven't done the research yet on my own to figure out who I like better.
What about you?
I personally don't like either one of them. That's why. And I feel like Dr. Oz has some kind of nefarious reason for doing it. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's a personal gain. I don't know, why he decided all of a sudden he wants to be a politician. Mm-hmm. That kind of perks my ears up a little bit. What's in it for him? What's he got to gain from it? And like I said, I didn't like Fetterman as a lieutenant governor, mainly his attitude.
Now, Basil mentioned how black voters are going to be key in this race and many races across the country. That's Philadelphia, a little bit of the Philadelphia suburbs. It struck me that there were no black voters in that panel, but these were undecided voters. And so do you think that these folks literally are going to wait until Election Day to make up their minds? Is that the sense that you got?
Those were undecided Bucks County voters. And actually, right before that group, we spoke to African-American Democratic voters in Philly. And though they had questions about John Fetterman, they were going to vote simply because of the bigger question of preserving democracy, and they saw it as a choice of choosing extremism over illiberalism. Specifically with this group, I think that the debate is going to be so decisive when it comes to those undecided voters. They want to see John Fetterman up against Dr. Oz and gauge his performance after the stroke. We showed them clips of the interview that NBC's Dasha Burns did with John Fetterman, and they still had questions about his recovery, and that's just the way the world works and how voters are going to take a while when it comes to this 6-year decision.
6-year decision. We're going to see how that closes out in Pennsylvania. I want to move to talk about the House, especially as it pertains to races in your neck of the woods, Basil. I'm talking about New York. Now, the redistricting process in New York was messy, for lack of better terms. And now you've got Democrats like the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Sean Patrick Maloney, defending a seat that he hoped would be safe. Now, Basil, Republicans, they need a net gain of just 5 seats for a House majority. That assumes that Democrats hold all the seats that they currently have. Do you think that New York alone could give Republicans that number?
Well, it'll be close, I have to tell you, and that's too close for comfort, quite frankly. New York was not supposed to be a state that Republicans could look to gain seats. In fact, it was a state that Democrats believed that they could regain a couple of seats, particularly that Max Rose seat in Staten Island, currently held by Nicole Maliotakis. But you're right to raise the Sean Patrick Maloney seat. That redistricting fiasco, I'll call it, created a tremendous amount of chaos in New York, and it essentially forced a member of Congress, Mondaire Jones, to leave his district and go, I think, 10, 12 miles, maybe even more south to run for a congressional seat there. So there's a tremendous amount of turmoil, a lot of unknowns. And what's happened is that the Republican, Mike Lawler, who was a sitting member of the state assembly, has gained a lot of ground against Sean Patrick Maloney. And that is a very tight race. There are probably two or three others that Republicans look to be able to take. And that would really go down as a blemish for New York to have contributed to in any way to a sort of a Republican control of the House.